How's it going, guys? Just before we start today's episode, I just want to say a massive thank you for being here, for tuning in, having a listen, having a watch to the show. Truly makes a massive difference. And I just know you're going to come away from here with something just really good from this episode. However, I just want to say quickly that over the last couple of years doing this podcast, we have gone from 0 to 100 in this podcast with just the quality, the editing, the guest range. And that's been made possible by the amazing subscriber base who have just hit that subscribe button and just supported me on this journey. And I'm going to ask you if you could do the same today. If you enjoy this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button or a follow if you're on audio only. It truly makes more of a difference than you could ever imagine. And honestly, just every subscriber that goes into that number, it just contributes more to getting better and better guests on the show. So if you could just hit that subscribe button, or if you've already done that, maybe give it a share around or leave a rating and a review. It truly makes a massive difference to getting this show to the true vision I have for it. So guys, without further ado, let's get over to the episode and enjoy. Cheers. How's it going, guys? Welcome to episode 106 of Talk4, the quickfire podcast where we ask 4 great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me. Let me introduce our very special guest for today, Steve Eckert, who's going to be answering some questions today. So, Steve, how's it going, man? How's your day going so far? And welcome to the Talk4 podcast, man.
What's up, brother? What's up? I'm awesome. Looking forward to it and ready to roll, ready to make it happen. Love getting on conversations with men like yourself where we get to just chop it up and talk about these high level, meaningful situations. So let's do it. Ready to roll.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So to kind of kick this off then, in about 30 to kind of 60 seconds ish or so, elevator pitch, sort of, you've just gone up to the bar, you've met someone cool, you're kind of explaining who you are, just a little bit about who you are, what your day job is, and just a little kind of snippet into the life of what you get up to, if that's okay.
Sure. My main, if I say my main day job is after being a husband and a father is, I like to say I'm the asshole that everyone needs in their life. I'm the one in people's life who's going to tell them what they need to hear, not just what they want to hear. And everyone really needs that in life. I'm the one that's going to help you flip that switch and kind of break the cycle from where you are to where you currently are to where you want to be, with those breaking through those barriers. And what better way to do that than being a husband and a father? And those are my number one clients, my number one fans, my number one coaches are my family. So after that, the rest of the day is easy. If I know I'm firing all cylinders there in my main job, which is being a husband and a father, all the coaching and events and workshops and speaking, all that other stuff, I know is going to be easy and it's going to work out. It's going to happen exactly how it has to be. So my main job is just being a husband and a father first and foremost.
Absolutely. Family always first. And like you said, I do think that when you have that on point, those cylinders firing, the rest of the engine takes over straight away too. But how did you get into this then? So take us back to young you, where you picked up the skills you're using today, getting into the military and stuff, and talk to me about becoming a Marine and the drive to join really as well. So how did it all happen for you?
Yeah, sure. So I have a family history in the military, but it wasn't like I was following any glorious family history. When I was a kid, I was a loner. I was the youngest of 6 kids, a loner, just by myself, really had no friends, from a poor family with a father who I really wouldn't consider a positive male role model. So I didn't really have the greatest childhood when it comes to that. And when it came time and there was a decision, I was either going to jail or going to the Marine Corps. It was either jail for 1 to 3 years or Marine Corps for 4 years. That was a decision a judge made. And I luckily went to the Marine Corps. And you could say that's one of those big flipping the switch moments in my life that was a breaking a cycle. So taking me in a whole different trajectory in life and getting into the Marine Corps. And then from there, I'd say that's when really the leadership lessons started when I was a kid. You don't even realize it. And then the leadership and all the different frameworks, of course, are then instilled in the Marine Corps when you're talking about honor and courage and commitment and leadership traits and communication and teamwork and problem solving. And even then, you really don't appreciate it that much while you're actually in it. But it's not until, I'd say, really when I came out of the Marine Corps, started doing personal training, then opened up my own business, opened up a gym, and then had my first son, was when I started really, you really start looking at the world a little different. Then you start looking back. Once my son is born, and I start looking back at all the lessons I learned in the Marine Corps and just start writing about it and journaling about it. That's really when I got into journaling pretty much for the first time, was once my son was born, and realizing how many valuable lessons and meaningful relationships and conversations and connections and leadership traits you got from the Marine Corps. And then digging even further back, because now that I'm the father, looking back at childhood, and where's all the lessons I learned from there? Where's all the struggles and the suffering and the pain and abuse and whatever else that I suffered from a kid that I can now utilize and take that suffering and turn it into a superpower? So combining things from a shitty childhood to the Marine Corps, to then starting a business, to having a kid, all that combined kind of creates the framework of how I pretty much operate on a daily basis for myself in my own freaking life. And then how I deal with clients when I'm doing coaching or when I'm speaking or interacting and helping other men to kind of flip that switch and break the cycles that I was kind of caught in that pattern I was in. But you really don't a lot of times learn and appreciate until you look back. That's why reflection and journaling and all that is so important, because you forget this shit, miss shit while it's going on usually. And that's one of the huge lessons that I now have as I'm getting an older adult, is to reflect, but also dig into the moment, dig into being a little more intentional in the moment, in the present freaking moment, like right now, so that you don't miss the shit that's going on. You don't have to wait 10 or 20 years to get the benefit of right fucking now. Like, dive into the moment now, be intentional about everything you're doing, be totally laser beam focused and present. And that's kind of how I operate day to day.
We've spoken quite a lot about a subject of generational trauma on the podcast before with a few other guests. And from what you've explained there, it sounds obviously like your father was a very negative influence on that childhood, and it took you down some worse paths. But now looking at you and obviously hearing how you handle family and how you are as a father, you've clearly flipped that narrative from that influence into now being a positive influence with your own family. What was the change point there for you? Was there a certain moment where things changed for you, or was it in general going into the Marine Corps and finding brotherhood in there? What was the change for you with that to get you on this path now?
Yeah, the Marine Corps was definitely a piece of the puzzle, but really, I think at one point it was when my son was born. He was just either a couple weeks or a couple months. I don't remember exactly how old he was, but it was when I owned a gym in New York, and me and my wife ran the gym together. So he was just born. So she was out of the gym. She was home alone with him, taking care of him. And I'm at the gym, and we were still a pretty new business. So still behind on bills, catching up, just trying to become profitable. And I'm sitting there working 12, 14, 16, 18-hour days. I'm just there all fucking day. I'm doing everything at that point, doing all the training, all the clients, all the classes, doing all the sales and marketing, the follow-up, cleaning the toilet bowls, ordering the equipment, doing all the follow-up, every single task in the business at the time. And I came home one night after, it was like, when we're talking 7 days a week from 4 a.m. till who knows when, 8, 9, 10 p.m. in the gym, until I got home and only had a few hours of sleep. And I remember after doing that for several weeks, 7 days a week, or even months at that, I don't remember how long it was, but I came home one day, and my wife, I remember, took a picture of me when I came home, and she said she was going to show Tyson, who's our son, she's going to take this picture to show him how hard I was working for him and all this other stuff. And although that seemed like it should have been like a great moment, just looking back now that you're asking this question, I'm thinking about it. And that was one of the moments where I realized, all right, I'm not here. I'm still absent. Even though I'm living here in the house, I'm absent. It doesn't matter. This little son of mine doesn't give a shit if I'm going to build a freaking empire. Either way, I'm not in the house. I'm missing out on the experience. So I realized at that point, it's time to start changing things. It's time to start digging a little deeper and reflecting back and really, really changing the way that I was doing things and operating. Because, yeah, you have to have those sprints where you have to work 20 hours a day sometimes, but if it's right at the time when a kid is born and I'm missing, I'm an absent father. I was becoming my father in a completely opposite, different way, not as negative way that he was, but it doesn't matter. I still was not in the home. I still wasn't present. I wasn't there. I was missing out on day-to-day stuff. I'm just there going home to go to sleep, to go back to the rat race. So I realized at that point, I had to start changing the way that I was doing things as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a freaking man, or else my son's going to grow up feeling the same way about me as I did my father, even though it's for completely different reasons. But I realized I was going down that same path one way or the other. An absent father is an absent father. I think that's one of the biggest issues in the world, especially in our country, but really it's all probably across the world, is fatherless homes, or even absent fathers that are in the home because they're just distracted. And I've seen some of your previous episodes talking about how easy life has become, and it's made men so freaking weak. Like it's the biggest problem is these fatherless homes or absent fathers in the home.
I couldn't agree more. And that literally is Webster's textbook definition of what generational trauma is and how that works. But so you talk about reflection, and reflection a lot of the time can be a very difficult thing to do for a lot of people, especially when they're deep rooted within their own mindset and their own life, and they have a hard time admitting what they probably know deep down, or at least coming to terms with it. So quickly, before we move on, what did reflection look like for you? What form did that take to come to terms with that and then make that change? Because obviously you have to go through stages to get to the point where you can make a change, and you have to come to terms with it. So how did you do that? What were you doing? Was it journaling? Was it meditation? How did that look for you?
Yeah, great question. And it's a little combination of all that, but it really came down to coming to that point, that same kind of moment, and realizing, like, all right, how do you stop that generational trauma that you're talking about? To me, it's such a fucking no-brainer. I don't know how men don't see it. When you went through a bad experience, and if you're starting to create that bad experience with someone else, like an abusive father, that abusive child that then becomes a parent as an abusive father to his kids, like he knew what it was like on the other end of that shit being abused. Like, to me, seeing a shitty childhood, now that I'm having a second chance, having a kid of my own, it's like such a no-brainer. Like, I know exactly how I don't want it to be. I know the exact blueprint of what it shouldn't look like. So now I'm just going to do the opposite of that and show them and create what it should look like. Like, to me, it's such a no-brainer. Like, I don't want to be like him. I don't want my son to have to grow up as a kid like me. I know how much it fucking sucks. Why would I put that upon anyone, especially my own fucking kid? Like, to me, that's such a no-brainer. So that type of reflection is where it started. And I said, all right, if this is what I'm thinking and this is what I'm feeling, all right, I'm gonna go back. We're gonna look at the childhood. I'm gonna break it all down. I'm gonna think of all the situations and experiences, and think of all the things that I say, boo-hoo, poor little me, look what happened. All right, and how can I stop letting that stuff pull the puppet strings in my life? Instead, I'm going to make that, all those different scenarios and all that bullshit, I'm going to make it my bitch, and I'm going to use it I'm going to weaponize it and use it to my advantage, to take those different hardships and adversities and turn those adversities into advantage, turn that suffering into a superpower. Like, and looking at all the ways that I acted as a kid and said, okay, how can I use that to my advantage now as an adult so I don't make the same mistakes? How can I not create this same situation for my son? But also, how can I learn from it myself and make myself even better? Take this bullshit and make myself bullshit bulletproof, where I can just go and attack the world and not let this stuff hold me back. Because I deal with men from all over the world, and I'll deal with 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old men that are still freaking weighed down by the shit from their childhood that they just haven't been able to get over yet as a man. And it takes reflection to do that. And my reflection would usually be, is the usual. It's journaling. Like, got a book right here, and I have a couple different types of journals, but some of it's more intentional and guided. And then I have just a free form one that I'll just spit out thoughts and ideas, and that stuff turns into content, sometimes turns into coaching pieces, turns into lessons for myself, turns into breakthroughs. But yeah, I'm just writing down, and it is journaling. I'm going into always starting off with gratitude, and we hear it all the time, but people just talk about gratitude, but they don't really practice real freaking gratitude. So I'm talking reflection is a deep level of gratitude. Like I'm gonna be grateful for what I have, and really go and use gratitude as an energy, as a force that I'm injecting back into the universe, not just putting a cool little picture on social media that talks about gratitude and think, okay, I'm practicing gratitude. I'm going to really feel it and use it and practice it and appreciate shit and not bitch and complain like people do. And like, cause shit, back then I would have killed for the life I have now. So who the fuck would I be to go and complain or not be grateful for the life I have now? Even when things don't go your way and you have ups and downs, like I'm going to hold the line and I'm going to stay centered. And that's all part of that reflection, reflecting back, like looking where you were, where you came from, giving yourself some freaking credit as a man. Men don't give themselves enough credit because they don't go and look back. They don't even know themselves. They don't even know their strengths or their superpowers or their lessons learned in their life. And you ask a man what he's good at or what his superpowers are, and he usually doesn't know how to answer that. And that's all part of what the journaling comes into the gratitude, to the victories, giving yourself some credit, lessons learned. And this goes on a daily basis. So those are some of the quick ways of doing it.
Let's dig right into what you were just alluding to there then. So if we structure this podcast in a way we go from problem into solution, and we begin now with the problem, at least, you're a men's mentorship coach. You're wired deeply into seeing what men are going through right now in society and what that mentality and the state of it really is out there in the culture. And as you said a little bit earlier, some of the past podcasts, we've covered this topic that men are becoming quite weak nowadays. And I wanted to ask you, obviously you alluded to fatherless homes, which I'm sure is a massive part of it, but it can't be all of it. So what are the problems that are creating such weak men now? And like, what is going on in the world that is weakening us, and why is this happening?
So yeah, and again, I think it does start there. So when I talk to men, when we do this one program, it's an in-person. It's a very, very in-depth, intentional, and immersive program where they're really broken down. They're sleep deprived, and they're hungry, they're tired, they're bruised and battered, and they're training and getting broken down. And it's really to have we're breaking them down to have breakthroughs. And after a certain amount of time, we send all the media guys out of the room, and we sit there for several hours, and we're going into this section where we're pretty much talking to these men that are still there at this point, because they've already brought their guard down. Men usually don't want to be vulnerable or whatever else, or we suffer in silence. So we have to beat them the fuck down so that we have to beat them down a little bit. So they come in with their guard up. So it lowers down. And they're so beaten down and hungry and tired. They're like, all right, whatever. What do you want to know? And that's when we go into this segment where we pretty much ask them, all right, what is the worst experience of your life? And then we talk about how it's affected them and this and that. And then also how they could turn that into a superpower. And when it comes down to the worst experience in a man's life, 80 to 90% of the time, it's going back into childhood, which leads to drugs and alcohol, which leads to the women issues. So that's just on a basic level. Now you take that, and that's from the older men to the younger men. It's those three things 90% of the time. It's daddy issues, drugs and alcohol, and then women issues, which usually the first two lead to the women issues. Usually go in that order, and it's every time. Then you ask them about another time we talk about a picture of them at their worst. If they could think of a picture when they were at their worst, and they describe that picture, like an actual photo they have. And in that photo, it's always when they were fat and out of shape or lazy. They're either partying or high or drunk or doing stupid shit they know they're not supposed to be doing as a man. And it's a photo they're thinking of at their worst. It always involves those poor decisions, those vices. So if that's already how men are being wired because of those fucked up childhoods, and then it goes to the drugs and alcohol, to the women problems, that's already naturally happening because of those daddy issues, whatever you want to call them, that mess up childhood. Now you add into it, like you were just talking about, and you've talked about in the past, the whole technology thing where life is just so comfortable and easy and convenient. Like I could order my Amazon stuff right now and stare at my phone and track where the truck is. Like, how soon is it my whatever going to be at my house? And we expect that, and that's the new generations that are being built up. And we're creating a whole new generation of people like that. And so add that comfort and ease and laziness into what's already built into men in that suffering in silence and not being able to control their rage, not being able to control their emotions because of the daddy issues that leads to the drugs and alcohol, to the women issues. And now you put this lazy, fucking weak and soft sugar on top of it. It's a disaster. And that's why we have now the kids are confused about what bathroom they're supposed to use in school. Like, how the hell did we get to there? And it's just those childhood issues. You know how to weaponize the technology. Technology is awesome if you weaponize it and use it the right way, not let it use you. You need to use it instead of letting it use you. Same thing with your fucked up childhood. I'm going to use it. It's not going to use and abuse me. I'm going to weaponize it. And I'm going to see how can I not even weaponize it, then even imagine the next step, even monetize it. You could turn it into a business, or how you can make money off of these shitty things that happen to you, or the technology, or social media, or whatever. So I think it's combined with that natural tendencies of man, the downhill slope that men have naturally gone on. You add on all the comfort and ease. It's just, we make it so comfortable to bitch and complain and make excuses when we don't get our way. It's really men acting like little freaking girls, or acting like the little boy that's trapped inside them from their freaking childhood that now is even entitled 1,000 times more because this shit is stuffed down their throat and scrolling on the internet and all this other shit.
It's a very deep-rooted problem, but it gets me thinking then. So I don't know if you know the exact numbers to this, but I'm sure from your experience, you could at least give me some sort of an idea. If I picked out 20 random strangers, men from the street, and we put every one of them in the same room, and I was looking around at all of them, how many of them, or what percentage roughly of men in that room do you think I'd be looking at? And there would be some sort of major issue with them in terms of the three things you were talking about. So parent problem, women, or abuse of substance. How many of them would be suffering without being able to see it, would you say?
Yeah. And if we add in just lack of the emotional intelligence, or lack of the soft skills like discipline, energy, confidence, leadership, courage, like all those things led to these deficiencies, or having those in some way. So let's break it down by numbers. If father, we agree, we can say, and the statistics show it, that when a father's not in the home, a kid is more likely to be sexually abused, more likely to go to jail, not graduate college, make less money whenever a father's not in the home. Like, those are statistics across the board, in all across different races, religions, even rich, poor, different states, different countries. Like, those statistics are there. So if the father's not in the home, the kids have a less of a chance to succeed. So if we look at there's, I think, around 40% of kids, and this is I think in the United States, I'm not sure the numbers are in other countries, but if 40% of kids are born into a single parent home, so they're born without the traditional family intact, so that's 40%. That means the other 60%, all right, have two parents, but that are married. And out of those marriages, there's over 50% divorce rate. So now we had those first 40% that are going into just having just their mother. Now, out of those people getting divorced, half of those are getting divorced. And we know that 80 to 90% of those are going to go with their mother, because whenever there's a divorce, the man takes a beating in court and he's the bad guy no matter what the situation. That's almost always how it happens. So look at those numbers. Now that leaves 2 to 3 men in the home with their kids. It's fucking crazy. Out of those 2 to 3 men, how many of them are focused and disciplined, have energy and confidence and work on time management and decision making, are leaders, and they're staying fit and healthy? If our obesity rate are overweight, 70% of Americans are overweight, 40% are obese. So now out of those 2 to 3, 70% of them are just fat and out of shape. I'd say out of, how many did you say? Out of 20? I'd say 1 or 2, maybe 1 or 2 are where they want to be, have their shit together, and a positive male role model. As fucking sad and as horrible that is to say, look when you're walking down the street. Like you could see people's body language, how a man shakes your hand, can't make eye contact, a grown man. They're fat and they got a gut and man tits. Like those are not people that are someone who you want to look up to. Their kids aren't looking at them like, oh, I want to be just like that man. Hell no. Maybe 1 or 2 out of 20, which is freaking sad and horrible. And this is why we're here doing this, having this talk and on this freaking mission to start breaking that freaking cycle.
So how do you do that then? So what is the way out for these men? And obviously we alluded earlier on to beginning with at least being able to reflect and look at that and be honest and then work actionably out of there. But if we were speaking to those men right now who we were talking about, that 18, 19, who are suffering in some way in various degrees, what is step one? Like what would you do after putting down this podcast, being one of those people, for example? What's the first call of action that you would go and do? Is it going outside for a walk to talk to yourself? Is it picking up a journal book? Is it, where do you begin, and how does that start that change?
Yeah. So one of the further steps down the line will be to be around other men and let other men pour into you. Get those male role models and guides and mentors that can pour into you and maybe show you the way, give you an example you never got. But you need to be willing to do that. In order to be willing to do that, that man probably had to do a little bit of work on his own. So it does start with the things that you're talking about. And I think it really starts in just taking care of himself, fathering himself first. Like he has to make the decision. Out of those, so if only 1 or 2 out of those 20, that leaves those 18 left. Maybe 20% of that 18 actually wants and is going to do something about it. The rest have kind of like, look at the way you see people talk, like on the internet and act, or their priorities are out of whack. A lot of them don't even want it. There's a majority that are never going to do anything about it. And no matter how much you try to help them, they're just unhelpable, uncoachable, no matter how hard you try to pour into them. But the ones that actually want it have to start fathering themselves first, fathering that little boy that's inside them by doing that self-work. And it probably starts in the gym. Like that's the first and easiest step to get creating discipline. It's like, to me, taking care of yourself as a man is like the foundation of discipline that leads to all those other areas. And then, yeah, it goes into that reflection, like we were talking about, into planning out and prioritizing and setting up goals and really thinking about and creating what is your ideal future, ideal lifestyle you want to live. And then going deep and dark into that about what does that look like? What does that feel like? Painting that picture of it and looking at where you are now. And then, all right, what's it going to take to get to that ideal lifestyle? Reverse engineering it. But it probably, on the simplest form, starts at yourself, getting healthier, having more discipline. Discipline is the foundation of everything, because then that will lead to the motivation. And it's going to lead, the discipline will lead to the energy, to the confidence, to taking the action and doing the shit you have to do. And really, it's about, I think, finding out who the fuck you are, who you really are, and living your own life, your own self, finding out who you are and being that. Like that's I think something that overwhelms most people. Most people are not living their own real, true lives as a man. They're living who they think the rest of the world wants them to be, Mr. Nice Guy or Mr. Cool Guy, or whatever, instead of really just who they are, their freak selves. Once you're able to think that and not give a shit about the rest, and take care of yourself and build that discipline, start training and working out and eating healthy, that foundation right there is boom. That is a solid bedrock of foundation right there. Really living true to who the hell you are, your freak self, and taking care of yourself as a foundation. Then you start getting yourself around other, you've shown and proven yourself. You have the credibility that you want to do something about it. You want to change, you want to improve, and get yourself around other men who can then be that maybe father figure you never had, or be that positive male role model, or getting around those like-minded other freaks just like yourself, and asking for help, and stop suffering in silence, and make that decision that you're going to do something about it. Unfortunately, most men never make that freaking decision.
I've heard lots of debate as well. So I kind of want to dig into this a little bit now. So I've heard a lot of debate about where healing kind of stems from, whether that's something that begins inside of you or if it's an external thing. And I feel like in culture today, at least from a large amount of advertising from certain companies. And I think generally just the stigma around what you do is that when you're in trouble, you should go get therapy or something like this. But the thing I've always thought and the thing I've always felt towards those feelings and towards that kind of stigma is that if you leave a therapy session and then you go to McDonald's, don't sue me, if you go to McDonald's, or if you have the wrong food, or if you go to the gym, or if you don't go to the gym rather, and you follow those bad habits and you keep doing the wrong things, then it really doesn't matter until you've made that decision yourself. So would you say that it all starts from a self decision, or do you actually need that push from external people as well to get you on the right track?
Yeah, people say that motivation is not existent. You need just discipline. So discipline would be just from yourself. Motivation would be from external sources. There's definitely motivation that could help you. You could fuck something up really bad, make some real poor decisions, and whatever, someone gets divorced. That's their motivation to get their shit together. Sometimes it takes horrible tragedies for someone to get motivated. So technically that's an outside source motivating them. But I think it also comes down to pain. Like men need to not run from their pain and their suffering. That's what we do all the time. And then you need to embrace it, acknowledge it. First of all, embrace it in one way or the other. If that means you need to go to therapy, I'm not into that myself, but it's definitely obviously what a lot of people probably need. But it does start with yourself. I think you do have to make that decision, because those external sources aren't going to be able to help you if you're not first making that first, at least initial decision that, all right, I want to do something about this. Might be because something really bad happened, so you kind of were motivated. So it is a mix, I think, of discipline and motivation, but it all goes back to the pain. And then how do you do that along the way is continue that pain yourself. Continue. That's why like doing hard shit is so important, even on your journey as you're working through shit. Like, you don't want to avoid the pain. Once the pain is, you know that there's the men's work is in pain. Men's work comes from pain, whether it's past pain that you're working through, also comes from the future pain, like putting yourself through suffering. That's why I do like hard 24-hour challenges where I'm just beating myself the hell down so I can break down, so I can have those breakthroughs. Men's work is always in the pain. The pain always leads to purpose all the time. And we need to not run away from that, because we've gotten soft and we've gotten weak, like we were just saying. We avoid that. We avoid discomfort. We avoid uncomfortable situations. We avoid tough conversations that need to be had, and we don't want to have them because we don't want to rock the boat. We want to be the nice guy and whatever else. Pain is we need to go attack the pain in all those areas in one way or the other. But it starts at our, I think, decision to say, all right, had enough. I'm doing something about this, because otherwise you're just going to be one of those uncoachable, untrainable people. If someone from outside is just doing it, you don't make that decision. So yeah. I think the answer is in the pain.
Yeah, I totally agree with that too. And that's where you get to really test your worth as well. And it was in the very last podcast, I spoke about this actually, and the guest spoke about it too, about how you do need to push that. You need to push yourself and have these things where you're actually fearing almost for your life to be able to get into that situation where you are then growing and adapting to this kind of thing. But two pieces of advice that I've heard, which kind of structure to this next question, was one of them from Jocko, and he said that a day, when you start a new day, the stuff that happened in the day before, it gets cancelled out. It's a new day, it's a new start, it's a new morning, and the stuff that happened in the day before is irrelevant. It's all now, what are you going to do with this day? How are you going to start it? The other thing was the guy, I can't remember his name exactly, but he's famous for saying, if you want to change your life, start by making your bed. And you can begin a great day by starting it well, and then letting that snowball, and then going into the next thing. Like, what's the next thing? You have a great meal. Let's go to the gym. And then you've gone to the gym. I'm not going to get some fast food. I'm going to have a protein shake or something like this. And something I've seen that's quite prevalent in your social media and your pages is the importance of a very good morning routine. So if you strip it back and you look at the skeleton structure of a morning routine, as in not like the small stuff, but here's the most bare bone things that structure a great morning routine to go forward into your day with. How should it start? how should it end? And where do people kind of typically have a misunderstanding around what makes a good morning routine, do you think? I think this is massive for people going forward too, who want to make a change.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome, awesome question. And I could break down what my morning routine is, but that's not necessarily what would work for someone else. It's like what you said, it's like the purpose behind it. And for me, it's for me to take control of myself and control of my day and of my emotions, of my rage and anger and testosterone and worry and anxiety and whatever else that's in there, and fear and excitement. Take control of all that from the beginning of the day, so I can harness all that instead of letting, if otherwise we just wake up and all that shit's going to be there anyway. And we let all that shit just run us around and pull us like puppet strings. And then we just make stupid decisions. We get distracted by everything that's out there, and we waste a whole shitload of time. And then we wonder why our relationships aren't the way they should be. We didn't get to spend enough time with our kids. We're not making as much money as we want to. So all I'm doing is just sorting it out in the morning. I'm just taking control of my mind really from the morning, because then after that, once I can get control of that and get it sorted out and structured, and there's like tangible steps in there, and we could go into that too if we have time for it. But it's really about just getting control of myself and making it a good day for myself, no matter what. Like after I'm done with that, after I've just controlled myself and I've set the tone for the trajectory I'm going that day, there's nothing in the day that it can throw you off, because you're now in control. You've already locked down the foundation of the day. So it's just about controlling myself, controlling the day. And then, yeah, it goes into the priorities and planning and structuring and all that stuff. But it's really about control. I need to control it, so that control myself in the day, so the day doesn't freaking end up controlling me. That's really what, in a deeper sense, what the purpose of a morning routine is.
Yeah. No, Steve, you talk a lot of sense, and you really resonate with me, and the stuff that you've been saying has truly been valuable. I think especially for me too, I always like to learn new things and ask these kind of questions, because I think it's so important. We need to be quizzical. And if there's, let's do this in kind of levels then. So if we shameless plug now, a man or anyone who's really enjoyed listening to what you've been saying, if they want to just go and have a look at the stuff that you get up to and be in line for the social media stuff and the posts and the stories that you make, so they can get more out of you, where can they find that? And if we have someone listening who wants to go to a deeper level of this and be mentored or join a brotherhood or find some help potentially from you or your services, where can they go and do that too? So yeah, social media, websites, courses, fire away.
Yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate you putting it out there. But for me, it comes down to, if it's those people who that's that first step. It's them making decisions. It's not hard to find someone nowadays on social media. So I really just help men, again, flip that switch and break the cycle. I really help the fathers and men to develop a no excuses mindset, so that they can build that muscle that we're talking about, make more money, have more freaking meaning, which is what it's all about, so they can attack the mission that they've created in life, and they can create that ideal lifestyle, so they have time freedom for themselves and for their families. That's really what it comes down to. It's not even about plugging any social media stuff. If men want to take action on stuff, it's up to them to go and do the work and go and find and connect. I'm a believer that I'll run into and be connected with the people that I'm meant to connect with. And that's what it's all about, helping them to flip the switch and have that no excuses mindset, so they can adapt and overcome and destroy all the bullshit obstacles they put themselves in their way from their childhood and whatever else, the other vices that are preventing their success in their mindset, their family, their fitness, their business, really, so they could stop being the little bitches and the little boy that's trapped inside their body, and get their shit together and start living life on their own fucking terms to create their own personal, what I call freak freedom lifestyle. So that's really what it's all about. Men could start doing that, then that's all I ask.
Brilliant, Steve. Thank you so much. And what's quickly now become a slight tradition with the show, a new tradition, has been this final little question piece, which I've asked the last few guests, and I've had some really interesting responses. And I feel like your one here would be also very profound. So if you found a young 13, 14-year-old Steve Eckert running around the streets and you had that moment to kind of whisper a few words of wisdom into his ear, what would you tell a young you now, knowing what's ahead, and just what would you want to portray to that young you?
Yeah. Awesome question. First, I wouldn't give him any real answers because he needs to go and do those fuck ups, because that's where I learned all the lessons, all the stupid things decisions I made. But one thing I would tell him is that as a man, you have a purpose in life. Your purpose is to bring order to the chaos. I won't tell him how to do that, what that means. That's his journey to go through and lose and fail and fuck up to figure out. But his job is to bring order to the chaos. And I do think being a father is the purpose of being a man. So already like considering yourself in your head as a father to other men. Even you could be a father and not have any kids. You also, just because you have kids doesn't make you a father. It makes you a sperm donor. So just because you have kids doesn't make you a father, but you could also be a father long before you have kids by helping other people out, being a mentor to other kids. And then here's the other thing. As a 13-year-old, he's going into manhood and going into those years, is all right. You're your mother's son. She wanted a son and she has you as her son. But as you get older, your future wife is not looking for another son. She's not looking for another little child to take care of. She's looking for a leader. She's looking for someone who's strong and it has mastery over himself and is focused and disciplined. She's not looking for another son. She's looking for a man. And take that with the man's purpose of bringing order to chaos and fathering other men. I think that's what I would give to him. I wouldn't give him any of the real secrets because he needs to go and fuck up and find out a lot of that stuff for himself on his own journey.
Definitely. Well, that's a hell of an answer, and I wholeheartedly agree. But Steve, thank you so much for joining me today for the Talk4 Podcast. It's been a very, very good talk, and I really, really appreciate you making the time to do this. It's been an honor to talk to you.
Awesome, brother. Thanks for having me on, and I could do this shit all day. I love this shit.
I know, it's great stuff, isn't it? And guys, thank you for listening. This was 106. If you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at our channel. And if you'd like to listen in for the future ones, please do me the favor hitting that subscribe button. It makes a massive difference to the channel and the guests who get to come onto the show too. So guys, please spread some love. Leave a like, leave a comment. Fights on. See you next time, and good night.